thing about his theology. Bildad sees no healing for the spiritual condition of man, period. He doesn't see that. And he's going to give us a couple of illustrations here in this last verse that is so wrong, but it is so graphic. Look what he says now in verse number 5. Behold, even the moon, and it shineth not. That means is not bright. So compared to God's standard of brightness, the moon batteries are dying. It's just not getting the job done. It is just so small and tarnished almost. So the sun or the moon is not shining. The stars are not pure in his sight. And again, the understanding is they're tarnished, they're turned down, they're weak, they're not strong at all. Now we go outside like the other night, Sunday night, and it was so dark, and when that moon was covered up, the stars just went, I mean, they were just bright, and I didn't think they were tarnished at all. But in God's sight, compared to God, Bildad is saying, everything that is magnificent and marvelous and wonderful pales in comparison to God. Now he gets down to us. Man, look what he says about us. There are two words in verse number 6 translated worm. And they mean two completely different things. And this is what he thinks of us, all right? How much less man that is a worm. And that word, worm, is translated maggot. Now, a maggot is born out of putrefaction, born out of decay, born out of, well, y'all know where maggots, you see where maggots are coming from. And just a disgusting little creature that is just nauseating. Then he says, not only are we like maggots, but we're like a worm. The Son of Man is a worm. And the word worm in verse number 6, the second appearance of that word is earthworm. Kind of lowly, insignificant, not much value. This is what Bildad thinks of mankind. Now, he's got a pretty good view of who God is. But this is what he thinks of us. We're just a bunch of maggots. We're worms. We're weak. We're insignificant. God doesn't care about us, and there's this disconnect between, it's like God is all of this, we are maggots. Well, God has a higher view of mankind than that. But this is okay. That's all I got to say. And I'm kind of like, woohoo, I am glad that's finally all you have to say. Now Job takes the microphone. Now I've got to tell you, there's a controversy in chapter 26, and that controversy is that the first 4 verses belong to Job, and verses 5 through 14 belong back to Bildad, and Bildad finished his speech. I have a little problem with that. I'm not saying that is just illogically incorrect. I'm just saying I prefer to look at this as a flow, and so we're going to look at it from that point of view. Now, verse number 1 of chapter 26, Job couldn't, he could not resist the opportunity to take one more slap at Bildad. Matter of fact, now he's going to talk to all 3 of them. And I don't blame him. What he's going to say here, I'd say is justified. So let's see what he does say. Job answered and said, how hast thou helped him that is without power? How savest thou the arm that hath no strength? And the word savest there means support. Just want you to know, I really appreciate the help you've given me. All right, now the phraseology and the atmosphere of this is sarcasm. All right, there's nothing realistic about what he's trying to say here. From the Hebrew phraseology, he's being a smart mouth. Man, I just want to thank you. I don't know what I would have done without your expert counsel. Man, you guys have rolled in here and have just embraced me and loved me and encouraged me. Verse number 2, he says, wow, look at what you've done to save the one that has no strength. How hast thou counseled him that hath no wisdom? And how hast thou plentifully declared the thing as it is? Wow, you guys have just nailed it. You've hit it out of the park. Now, isn't it kind of odd to think that the Bible's got some sarcastic sections in it? But this is extremely sarcastic right here, okay? By the way, y'all ever done that? Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you for that, appreciate that. All right, so that's what Job has done. All right, now verse number 4, he's going to continue. To whom hast thou uttered words, and whose spirit came from thee? In other words, you guys are quoting somebody because you didn't come up with this. Where'd y'all get this stuff? Where did you come up with all of this wonderful wisdom? So again, he's continuing his little tirade. Now there's a change in verse number 5. He says, dead things. The word dead is the Hebrew word Raphaim. And Raphaim means the dead ones. So we're talking about those that are in the grave, okay? Dead things are formed under the waters. That phrase, under the waters, is the Hebrew word Sheol. So, dead people that are in Sheol. Now understand that at this point in human history, there was not a real clear picture like we have in the New Testament of heaven and hell. They understood that when a person died, everybody went to Sheol, the place of the dead. All right? So he says, dead things are formed under the waters, and the inhabitants thereof. Verse 6, hell, that is Sheol, or the place of the dead, this is the grave, is naked before him, before God. In other words, God's sovereignty is even over Sheol. There's no place where God is not sovereign. There's no place where his word is not final. Not even in the grave, not even in Sheol. So hell is naked before him, and destruction hath no covering. Now, the word destruction is the Hebrew word Abaddon. That sound familiar? You remember in the book of Revelation, chapter 9 and verse number 11. As a matter of fact, let's just turn and read that because it's going to get a little interesting here. Revelation 9. Now, beginning with verse 1, let me just kind of give you a backstory here. The fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. So we're looking at a spirit being who had already fallen, is the tense of the word fall. And he took a key, and he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit as the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit, and there came out of the smoke locusts and earth, and there's a description of this being who opens this place called Sheol, and these spirits come out. Now, interestingly enough, look at verse number 11. These beings, these spirits that came out of this place, had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon. The same word in the book of Job. Now, going back to Job, what is being said here? Well, we started with the bottom of the ladder, in Sheol, under the waters, in the grave. And there is sovereignty. There's no realm of existence that exceeds the sovereignty and the power of God. God is in control of everything, even the events in hell. What we understand to be hell and what Job understood to be hell are two different things. People who die today that are not redeemed, their sin account is in their own name. The Bible says that they immediately go to hell. The believer immediately goes to heaven. That used to not be the case before the resurrection. Before the resurrection, a lost man died, he went to hell. A saved man died, and he went to paradise or Abraham's bosom. All right? You remember the story of when Lazarus and the rich man died? Or when the rich man died, and there was this great chasm between the two of them? They were in the same sphere, but there was this huge chasm. You couldn't pass from here to here or here to here. This was Abraham's bosom. Lazarus died and went to this place. It was the place of pre-ascension rest and safety and security. This other place of hell was a place of torment and torture. When Jesus was crucified, he went to Abraham's bosom. He didn't go to hell. There was no reason to preach to the spirits in hell because they are now unredeemable. What he did, he went to this section of the underworld called Abraham's bosom or paradise. You remember what he told the thief on the cross? Not heaven, but paradise. This was where he was going. And so he went to paradise. He cleaned paradise out of the Old Testament pre-resurrection saved. He emptied those out, took those into the presence of the Father in heaven. And so now we're told in verse number 6, hell is open before him. That's how powerful God is. He's in charge even of hell. Destruction hath no covering. Abaddon, this king, is still under his control. Verse number 7, we've gone now from hell up to the heavens, and he says he stretcheth out the north over the empty place, and hangeth the earth upon nothing. Hell is uncovered before the eyes of God. There is no lid, there is no covering that can hold God's authority out of these places. And in verse number 8, as a matter of fact, 7 through 8, we're lifted up into the heavens. And we're given a little bit of information how at creation God decorated the universe by stretching out the heavens over the north place. He built, he outfitted, he painted, he put everything together. And Scripture also says, now look at verse number 7, that he hung the earth on nothing. That's an oxymoron. That there's no hangers on the walls of the heavens, no nails driven, no screws in the studs of heaven. He hung it on nothing. What holds the earth in position? The sovereignty of God, the power of God, the will, the wish, the desire that this planet only move in certain specified motions. And we do. We spin, that takes 24 hours. A diurnal revolution. Then there's the sun, and the earth does this. As it's spinning, it's orbiting the sun. That takes 365 and a quarter days. All exactly the way God designed this in Genesis chapter 1, 2, and 3. And so we are living in and underneath the sovereignty of God every day of our lives. Now, look at verse number 8. He bindeth up the water in his thick clouds, and the cloud is not rent under them. All right? You know that the clouds are kind of like magic erasers. Y'all have used magic erasers. Those things will clean anything, man. They'll take ugly off an ape if you rub them hard enough. And so the clouds, fluffy and white, clean, they float around the universe or the earth. And there's dirt in the atmosphere. It gets dirty and dusty, just like our houses do. And the tops of your dresser gets dust, and your ceiling fan blades will get dirty, and so things get dirty. And so these magic erasers, they just meander around, and they clean up, and they get dirty. They've scrubbed the atmosphere, and they get really, really dirty. And when they get really, really dirty, guess what happens? They get wrung out. All right? And that's what, when it gets dark, there's some rain clouds back there. All it is dirt. And one grain of dust or dirt collects one drop of moisture, and that happens in a cloud, but it doesn't tear a hole in the cloud and fall down like you just pour a cup of coffee in the floor. It comes down in drops, and the Lord distills rain like that. And the Scripture says that he binds up the waters in his thick clouds, and the cloud is not rent under them. He holdeth back the face of his throne. You know why you can't see the throne of God? Well, poetically speaking, in verse number 9, it's because it's covered with clouds. He has hidden himself behind these clouds. And he spreads his cloud upon it so that you can't see him. Verse 10. He hath compassed the waters with bounds until the day and night come to an end. The word compass means to draw a circle. So here's what we've got. We have a round spherical planet that we live on. We are orbiting from west to east slowly, at least as far as our perception is concerned. But the earth is rolling this way. Here's the sun. As the earth rolls to the east, it actually rises. The sun doesn't rise, but the earth does. And so as the earth continues its roll, the sun appears here early in the morning, and it disappears over here. Look what he says now in verse number 10. He has drawn a circle around it until the day and night come to an end. Now, is the earth round? The earth is round, spherical. We hadn't always believed that. There, by the way, is still a flat earth society, which tickles me to death. There's still folks that say that we're flat. And so he's given us some scientific information here, that the earth is spherical and that there are bounds even to the waters. Aren't you glad that God has drawn the line in the beach and said this far and no further? Now, every now and then I realize there will be, some heavy rains that will bring it past that, but the rivers and the lakes and the oceans, these mighty, huge, impressive bodies of water, do what God says. You go this far and no further. Do you understand me? And the waters are like, yes, sir. So they come up to that part, and then that's as far as they go. All right, now verse number 11. The pillars of heaven tremble. And the pillars are mountain ranges. And the picture is that these mountain ranges are kind of like load-bearing columns. Now, we've got load-bearing walls around us here. And the picture is that these are like, the mountains are like this, and they're the load-bearing walls that hold up the ceiling of the heavens. Now, that's pretty hefty. That's pretty strong, pretty stout. But even they, according to verse number 11, tremble at his reproof. Even the load-bearing columns of the Rockies and the Smokies and the Andes and all of these mighty mountain ranges tremble when God, when the boss comes. There's a trembling there. Verse number 12. He divideth the sea. It means he moves the sea. Have you ever seen the sea perfectly calm? I have never seen the ocean perfectly calm. It's constantly doing this. Tides constantly coming in, going out. There's a constant movement, and that's on purpose. In essence, that's the way the Lord flushes the toilet. That's how he cleans the oceans, is through these tides. And so verse number 12 said that he moves the sea with his power, and by his understanding he smiteth through the proud. And that means its pride, the sea's pride, the pride of the sea. You've seen it, tsunamis. What can stop a tsunami? A wall of water 40 feet high? What's going to stop it? You've seen these sea walls over here on the east and the west coast. We get a hurricane, these sea walls that just disappear. When water decides to move by the hand of God, you might as well get in your car and go to Georgia. Or stay here and get wet. I mean, there's just nothing's going to stop it. Water, and we've probably all had water in your house. Water does what it wants to do. It gets where it wants to get. And so we're told now in verse number 12 that he moves the sea and he smites through it, through the pride of the sea. And the sea is not autonomous. It does not do what it wants to do by virtue of the natural elements of gravity. God is in control of gravity, the tides, the timing of the tides, verse number 13. Let's go even higher than the mountains. By his Spirit, he hath garnished the heavens. He's decorated the heavens. And we went over this in Sunday school just a few weeks ago. He's put stars, not in random places. We have in our galaxy here 48 groups of stars. Job refers to, and we'll get into it in just a few chapters, Scripture refers to it as the Mazzaroth. We don't call it the Mazzaroth today. We call it the zodiac. I much prefer the word Mazzaroth because it's a biblical term. And all it is a reference to these 48 constellations that tell the story of Jesus from the virgin birth to the second coming. And you got a major group, and each major group, which we know as the 12 signs, there are three decans or three assistants that help further explain the major sign. And so you got 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 12 times. And he did that. Matter of fact, he's going to name one of them. His hand hath formed the crooked serpent. That's Hydra. And so the Lord made this serpent. He put these stars, it's like a dot to dot. And when you connect these dots, there are pictures there. And the picture is, it's Jesus. I mean, every aspect of his ministry is there. And you cannot deny it. We have star maps that go back to the family of Seth that are basically the same exact thing. And so now we've added some crazy stuff in the last few hundred years, but originally we knew exactly what these meant. And I think for that 2,000-year period between Adam and Moses, this is one of the main ways that God got his word out to peoples around the world that had no contact with anybody that knew the Lord, like Adam. And so the world itself is its own evangelist. God has such sovereignty and such majesty that he has created an evangelist in the form of the earth, the sky, the seas, the animals, the plants, the stars, man himself, all tell the story of Jesus. All right? Now, verse 14. Lo, these are parts of his ways. Now, what we've just gone over is pretty impressive to me. And that little word parts right there means outskirts. This is nothing. You ever talk to anybody like that? Now, if somebody said that about themselves, wow, that was a great shot. Oh, man, that ain't nothing. And I'm always like, oh, boy. That's pretty good. Yeah, well, that ain't nothing, you know. Yeah, that's probably the best you could do right there, and you just want to try to impress everybody. But Job says, this is just the outskirts. These are just little things. Now, if these are little things, you know what I'm saying? What are the big things? What's more magnificent than what you can see in the physical universe? And so he goes on to say, these are the outskirts of his ways. But how little a portion is heard of him. The word portion means a whisper. This is just a whisper. You couldn't handle his full voice. And so what he does, he turns the volume down. That's pretty loud to me. To me, the physical universe is just like, whoa, this is amazing. But God's just whispering. Now, I don't know what he's going to do when he talks loud. You know, when he really booms it out, what's going to happen? But he says, but the thunder of his power, who can understand? I mean, who could stand up under if he just really raised his voice and showed who he really was? All right, now, chapter number 27. Moreover, Job continued his parable. Now, again, there's an interesting revelation throughout these chapters. Job's friends, unfortunately, never changed their mind. Even after, I think Job gave some pretty good evidence. And again, you know, their mentality was, the wicked are always punished, the good are always blessed. And Job says, but how do you explain the fact that there are young, righteous people that die? And how do you explain the fact that there are old, wicked people that are rich? Their kids are playing in the yard. They got everything. They've got gold like dust. And so the reality is, you guys are wrong. And they're like, no, we're not wrong. You're wicked. That's why you're being... But explain the realities of life. And they couldn't do it. All right? Now, so, and one thing about Job, the reason that Job is not consistent throughout the book is because he's growing. He's learning some stuff that he had no clue was true. And that was, well, wait a minute. Okay, I'm suffering. And I know me better than you guys know me. And I know that I have not done these things you charge me with. I have not stolen the property of the fatherless and the widows. And I have not turned away the poor. And I've not done any of those things. And those are your charges? Is that what you're saying? That's what you did. Okay, well, I know I didn't do that. And so there's got to be another answer to this. And so he just runs off and leaves them. And what's going on here, God's not doing this at all. God's allowing this to happen. Satan is the engine behind all of this destruction and death and decay. But Job doesn't know that yet. He's unaware of that. And so after a while, Job, he sort of built up a case with the Lord, and the Lord is going to understand this to be Job's position. I believe I could do a better job, Lord. I think I can handle this thing better than you're doing. And so God, again, has just been in the heavens. And said a word. But in just a little bit, he's going to say, okay, you think you could do better? You need me to step down? I need to resign, Job? And you need to, I see. Okay, I'll tell you what. I'm going to give you a test. And it's your God final. And if you can answer these questions, and welcome to the club, buddy. You know, maybe I just need to move over and we'll have another throne built. And you can sit right here with me and we'll co-rule. And he starts this little test, and Job made 0. He found out that he wasn't as brilliant as he thought he was. None of us are. None of us are. All right, now verse number 20, or chapter number 27. He's going to open this chapter with an oath. And in essence, he's going to say this: I swear by God Almighty, I am telling the truth. And this will be my position till the day I die. All right, let's read it in his words. Moreover, Job continued his parable and said, as God liveth, there's the beginning of his oath, who hath taken away my judgment. He's still not off this yet, all right? He's denied me justice, and Job's still thinking some wrong things about God, but he's still worshiping him. Lord, I don't care what you've done to me. All right, now you've taken some justice away, and you've not let me have any justice here. But I still love you, and you're still the God that I'm going to serve. And the Almighty, who hath vexed my soul, again, he's wrong. God did not do this. Satan is the one behind this. All the while my breath is in me, and the Spirit of God is in my nostrils, I will not confess to what I have not done. That's where he's going. If you didn't do it, don't confess to it. And Job maintains his innocence right up to this point. He says, verse number 4, my lips shall not speak wickedness, nor my tongue utter deceit. God forbid that I justify you. Now, how could he justify his buddies? What would be the ultimate justification for all their charges? For him to agree. For him to say, okay, you're right. I've done all this stuff. But, yeah, it wouldn't be true. Exactly, all right? Till I die, I will not remove mine integrity from me. I will stand on my innocence till the day I die. My righteousness, or my integrity, I hold fast and will not let it go. My heart shall not reproach me so long as I live. Now, he's made his stand. I'm telling you the truth. All these charges that you've laid against me are absolutely false. I will believe this till the day I die. I will speak this till the day I die. Now keep in mind that this has been probably the most eventful thing that's happened in this part of the world ever. You've got the man, Job, the richest man in this whole land, has experienced total, absolute loss and collapse. People want to know why. These three other pretty well-known men come to comfort Job, and they're sitting at the landfill with him. And Job looks horrible, and he smells horrible, and his breath stinks, and he's awful. And these men are sitting at a distance, and there's a crowd that has been gathered around. Matter of fact, they agree with these three men. They're shocked that Job would do this. They're just absolutely astonished. Job, I had no clue. This is how you got all this stuff? And so the sway of the crowd is against Job. Now, Job does something that is really, really, really unusual. He's going to do what David would do hundreds of years later in the form of imprecatory psalms. And an imprecatory psalm is a psalm prayed against your enemies. For instance, it would be like praying a curse on somebody. I pray the fleas from 1,000 infested camels sleep in your belly button tonight. That would be the curse. That's not in the Psalms, by the way. Thought I'd better let you know that. Anyway, so he's not going to get, he's going to get imprecatory here. All right, now look at the beginning of verse number 7. Let mine enemy be as the wicked, and he that riseth up against me as the unrighteous. Let them die without being justified. For what is the hope of the hypocrite? Though he hath gained, when God taketh away his soul. All right, he's gained all this stuff, and he's made all this money, but when he dies, now guess who he's looking at? He's looking at these three guys, all right? So they know exactly who he's talking about here. This is not just random, and everybody else is listening as well. So verse number 9, will God hear his cry when trouble cometh upon him? Will he delight himself in the Almighty? Will he always call upon God? No. The answer is no. The wicked man never calls on God. This is the guy, he doesn't care what God's will is. This kid that shot 5 people in Sebring today did not care what was right or what was wrong. I don't know what the deal was. I don't know if it was a domestic thing. Apparently robbery was not the motive. Why did he do that? Why did he murder 5 human beings that he probably did not even know? Verse 11. I will teach you by the hand of God. That which is the Almighty will I not conceal. Behold, all ye yourselves have seen it. Why then are ye thus altogether? You have seen the way life works. I don't understand it. Well, could we not say the same thing to people today that aren't saved? You know, man, you've seen God's goodness in the lives of his. You've seen the same beauty that we've seen. I don't understand. Why aren't people saved? Why doesn't every person in the world that's heard the gospel receive it? Well, they don't. And as a matter of fact, unfortunately, according to Scripture, most of the world's population is going to die and go to hell. Most will. There's a broad way that leads to destruction. There's a narrow way. And that narrow way is through the person of Jesus Christ. And most people are going to go through the broad way because most people believe they can save themselves through their goodness. This autosoterism stuff that every religion except Christianity is based on. All right, verse number 13. This is the portion of a wicked man with God, and the heritage of oppressors which they shall receive of the Almighty. If his children be multiplied, he got a bunch of kids, this lost guy does. It is for the sword. Why did the Lord give him a whole bunch of kids? So they can be targets for death. And his offspring shall not be satisfied with bread. All this stuff that the wicked guy has accumulated truly through oppression of the poor and thievery and all of that's going to be returned to the owners when this guy dies. What are his kids going to eat? Nothing. Nothing, all right? Those that remain of him shall be buried in death, and his widows shall not weep. It's kind of like, I am so glad he's gone. You know, they've been taken out of my misery, and I'm glad the guy's gone. So there's no, between the wicked man and his wife, there doesn't appear to be any love connection. She's glad he's dead. She's relieved. She doesn't have to live with this idiot anymore. Verse number 16. Though he heap up silver as the dust and prepare raiment as the clay, he may prepare it, but the just are going to put it on. You know what the wicked man's doing, Job says? He's filling his clothes, he's filling his closet up, he's filling his bank account up, and these people that have honored the Lord and these just folks are going to wear these clothes this guy bought, and they're going to be able to spend the money that he stole and collected, and so the innocent shall divide the silver. He buildeth his house as a moth, and as a booth that the keeper maketh. And that term keeper there is talking about a guard in the vineyard. These rich people had guards to keep animals and people from coming in and stealing their grapes. And they'd put up these little old, we'd call them little old palmetto frond shack, you know. Nothing to it, just keep out of the shade. And he says this is what this guy does. This is what he's built for his family, and when he's gone, this is all they're going to have. So the rich man shall lie down, but shall not be gathered. He openeth his eyes, and he is not. Terrors take hold on him as waters. And again, one of the things in this part of the world that was as terrifying as anything was flash floods. Because they lived on hard ground, and it wasn't like a sponge. Out here in Florida, my word, we can get a 4-inch rain, and in an hour it's gone. We live on this old sandy loam, and, you know, it just soaks up. And not like this. This is like when it hits glass. And so these people lived in terror of this. And so terrors take hold on him as waters or flash floods. A tempest stealeth him away in the night. The east wind carrieth him away, and he departeth, and as a storm hurleth him out of his place. So, here's a pretty graphic description of what happens to lost people. People that are wicked. Now, he doesn't say when. There's no time frame given here, and there's nothing in the Bible that gives us a time frame for the wicked and the righteous to die. We don't know when we're going to die. Nobody does, unless you plan to commit suicide. But we don't know. Are we going to die young? Going to die old? You going to die as a grandfather, or are you going to die as a young dad? Yeah, we have no clue. And to be honest with you, has anybody ever been able to see a pattern? I've conducted the funerals of little caskets about yay long. Sam and Audrey Rudd lost a baby years and years and years ago. Matter of fact, Sam lost Audrey. We all went to school together at Bible college, and Audrey was just this funny, razor-sharp wit kind of a girl, and she got cancer and died. Was she in her 30s? She wasn't even in her 30s, was she? Mid to late 20s. Just a really godly, wonderful young lady. She died. Now, explain that with this, the good live a long time. Really? Really? You know any young Christians that have died? Well, I do. Now, explain that. You know any wicked old people? I mean, they just vile. And we're going to be celebrating his 89th birthday, 105 years, you know. I'm like, really? I was going to thank you. I was just fixing to say, explain George Soros to me. A wicked, vile man. And how old is he? 209, something like that? The guy he's older than his mother. That's how old he is. Who? Betty White. She's a foul-mouthed old woman. Anyway, this worldview that these guys came in with has just been convoluted, but they won't admit it. This is kind of the funny thing about these guys. They're wrong. I can't help but think they know it. They ain't changing their mind about, yeah. But, and I think they just wanted to rub it in, And I think it all goes back. I really am convinced these guys were hyper jealous of the success of Job. Yeah. All right, now, look at verse 22. For God shall cast upon him and not spare. He would fain flee out of his hand. Cast upon him means fall on him. You ever watched a football game? I know you have. And you got a 185-pound quarterback. Drops back to pass. And a 325-pound lineman catches him. And what is the joy of a defensive lineman? Just a fall on him. Just a fall on him. And all you can see is a 325-pound lineman. When he gets up, yeah, you can see his fingers shaking out here. There's nothing you can do about it. When God decides to fall, what you can do about it? What can we do? If the world, and we're going to get into some descriptions of animals in the book of Job, and what we're going to look at is dinosaurs. Not crocodiles. These are not hippopotamuses. These are animals that are extinct today. Very plain with the descriptions. As a matter of fact, we're going to look at an animal that was a fire-breathing amphibian. And we have a little deal like that today in a very miniature. It's a beetle that's got two little sections in his forehead right here, and it's two chemicals. And he can, bombardier beetle, I think is what they're called. And they mix these chemicals together, and he's got a little horn right here, this little nozzle. And you pick him up, and buddy, he'll spit that stuff on you. Ants do this to one another. They'll spit this stuff. This is how they do war. You get two mounds of ants, and they'll spit this acid on each other. And so, but this thing's extinct. Thank God this thing's extinct. Because I like to hunt. I like to be in the woods. I wouldn't want to run in. Anyway, yeah, exactly. So, verse number 23. Men shall clap their hands at him and shall hiss him out of his place. A wicked man is just not well loved, not well received among communities and among people. And we'll be remembered for one of two things. And you know what they are. You're going to be remembered for the trouble you caused or the trouble you cured. The problems you created or the problems you solved. When we're dead and gone, and folks are down at the Pioneer Restaurant talking about us, or they're at Wendy's talking about us, or they're at Manny's talking about what are they going to say? What will be the tenor of the conversation? That was the most arrogant. That was the kindest. That was the most selfish. That was the most giving. Where are we going to fall within that? And so Job wraps this whole thing up. Now, next week, he's going to keep talking. And matter of fact, we've got chapter 28, 29, 30. We're going to go all the way over, if I'm not mistaken, to chapter 32. Job's going to talk to the end of chapter 31, and then the punk is going to stand up, and he's going to show us how stupid he is. I'm kind of anxious to see that.